there, Heather.
Good to see you, Anna Chafin. So I heard some news that you have a new role,
Absolutely.
and I wanted you to, hey, let's first do a little background because maybe there's somebody that doesn't know you. I doubt it, but if there is, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in economic development?
I think I'm like most people. I just fell into economic development. So about 20 years ago, I was working at Fort Stewart in a public relations capacity, and I was reading a hard copy of the Coastal Courier, which is the local newspaper in Hinesville. And I saw a job posting for a director of marketing and recruitment at the Liberty County Development Authority. It looked kind of cool, it looked interesting. So I applied and interviewed and got the position. And so I worked at the Liberty County Development Authority for about 8 years. And then I moved over to the Development Authority of Bryan County, and I was there for 10 years. And it was an awesome experience. I was very involved with the creation of the Savannah Harbor Interstate 16 Corridor Joint Development Authority. We'll just call it the JDA from here on out.
Okay.
And that was exciting. Of course, that group was involved in the recruitment of Hyundai. And that 4-county group included Bryan, Bullock, Chatham, and Effingham counties. And so after the project kicked off, I really developed a passion for workforce development, because the one thing that was keeping me up at night was, where are all of our employers going to get the people to work in their facilities? And so I really developed a passion for workforce development. And so when the opportunity opened up for me to lead RISE, I was excited to make the transition to workforce development and started in my new role January the 2nd of this year.
Oh, congratulations. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
tell us a little bit about that big project that you worked on with the JDA.
Yes,
What
so
was
the
that? I can't
Hyundai
remember.
project I would describe as fast and furious and very exciting. And so we got the first contact from the Georgia Department of Economic Development in early January of 2022. And the project announced in May of that same year. So it moved super fast. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me about that project was the collaborative spirit that everybody had, between the JDA, the 4 counties. I had my brothers from other mothers, Benji, Brant, and Tripp. We worked very closely together. Of course, Taylor Walden with the Georgia Department of Economic Development, Ashley Varnum with Georgia Power, who I adore, and of course, you, Heather, you were part of our story and helped us tell the story of our region so well to the executive chairman when he came to visit during the site selection process. So thank you for that. But professionally, that project was super rewarding for me and my peers throughout the region. And we're just so excited about the 8,500 jobs that Hyundai is going to create on site, and the $7.6 billion of investment. And then to me, it's super cool that we've got suppliers that have already announced in our region and in our state. And so I think when you look at it all in now, we're at about $10 billion of investment and over 15,000 jobs. So I'm just so proud that we were able to pull that together. And while that project moved very fast, it was about 8 years in the making, because the JDA had to identify the site, assemble the site, market the site. We had to work to get wetlands permits and acquire the property with the support of the state, and rezone the property. And so a lot went into making that happen. And we were able to move so fast between January and May that year because we had done so much work in advance, and it was certainly a team effort. So professionally, it was very rewarding. And personally, for me, it was rewarding because I had spent so much time and effort on that project and working with the JDA prior to the project. I'd sacrificed a good bit personally. I'd spent time away from my son and my husband. And so it was pretty cool the day of the announcement that they could join me at the site to celebrate, because they were able to see the fruits of my labor and the team's labor, all that time and effort we had spent. And it was cool for them to be that day to celebrate with us.
Yeah, I always hear everybody says that, economic development's a team sport, but actually being down there with you guys and sort of seeing it in action, it was so cool. Because you did all that, now this workforce thing has come up. So tell us what RISE is, and I guess what are you working on?
So RISE stands for Regional Industry Support Enterprise. And really, we're a regional workforce development organization. We came to be as a team on January 2nd of this year. And so we have 4 people on our team. In addition to myself, Justin Farquhar joined me from the Development Authority of Bryan County. He had been there with me for 7.5 years and had worked in a business recruitment and retention capacity. And then he had gotten very involved in workforce development initiatives over the past few years. We also have Jennifer Collins, who has a local economic development background. She worked at SEDA, the Savannah Economic Development Authority, for 4.5 years, and she's our project manager with RISE. And then Maria Whitfield, who has a very unique background. She worked in human resources and manufacturing for 20 years in our region, and so she brings a lot of great information to our existing industry. She technically works for the JDA and supports RISE, but starting in 2025, she will be full-time a part of the RISE team. And so that's the team that makes up RISE. And really how we came to be was from a workforce study that was conducted last year. And it actually started with a meeting that was called by Audrey King with Georgia Power. And so shortly after the Hyundai announcement, Audrey brought a small group of people together, and we talked about how do we ensure that we best understand what's happening from a workforce standpoint in our region. Now that Hyundai's announced and we know suppliers are coming, we want to make sure all of our existing industries are taken care of that have invested. And so from that conversation, we hired a consultant through the JDA. And really the big takeaway there is if we do nothing, starting next year in 2025, we're going to have more jobs than we have people to fill those jobs in our technical and production roles. And that will continue through 2031. So that caught our attention and made us realize that we needed to stand up the regional workforce organization. So we released the information to the public about the study last November. In December, it was announced that SEDA would be funding us in year 1, and then we started to work in January. And so we've been actively working to ensure that we've got talent pipelines that are available to all of our industries.
I would say, what are your goals for RISE? But like, obviously, that's a pretty obvious question, but maybe in your own words, like what do you hope to see?
Well, at the end of the day, it's really making sure that all of our industries have access to the talent that they need. And we want to do that through 6 strategic focus areas. And so we're going to put a lot of time and attention towards education. So this is certainly K-12, making sure that we've got alignment between our K-12 partners, our public school systems, and the career opportunities that we have available within our industries. It's partnering better with higher ed, our technical colleges and universities, to help strengthen those talent pipelines as well. We'll also be focusing on underrepresented. So this is everybody from second chance hires to minority groups to people with different abilities to senior citizens to opportunity youth. We feel like that these talent pipelines are underutilized, to be quite honest. And so we want to be a connector to help better make connections between these groups and our employers in the region. We also know that military needs to be a priority. We're fortunate. We've got Fort Stewart and Hunter Army Airfield right here in our backyard. And so that is producing about 3,500 soldiers separating annually from Fort Stewart and Hunter. And we're only retaining about 40% of those people. So we want to do a better job of keeping that talent locally to work within our industries. And so that's making better connections with the transition offices. Also hosting hiring events for the service members that are separating. Also, we want to target the military spouses. We know we've got about 3,000 spouses that are actively seeking employment. So we want to be that connector to help make the connections between the spouses and the employers as well. So those will be 3 of our focus areas. And then also we're going to spend some time with housing. We know that's directly related to workforce development. And so there's an active study underway with Georgia Tech, and this is a housing needs assessment for our region. So we think that data that we receive back will help inform our local governments on what they need to do with housing going forward. Transportation is also going to be a focus because it's a barrier right now for some people to get to work. So we want to look at regional transit within our area. And then finally, marketing. So this is marketing to our homegrown talent, our job seekers, and our students that are graduating from our public schools, but it's also marketing outside of our region. We believe that we've got a great value proposition when it comes to our career opportunities, but also our quality of life. And so we want to try to attract talent to move here from outside. We're going to focus on our technical and production roles. But what we hope happens is we have somebody move here for maybe a job as an electrician or an assembler or a mechanic, but they'll bring a trailing spouse or dependent with them that could work as a teacher, a nurse, or as a public health and safety professional. And so that will overall fill in some of our workforce gaps that we've got in our region.
That's a lot, but it's
It
so
is.
cool. It's very cool. Like the puzzle is all coming together. What's the response been like so far from the community and the industry?
I think the best way to characterize it is everybody's been very enthusiastic and supportive about what we're doing. We want to properly scale what we do with RISE. And so the 4-county JDA was super effective for almost 10 years. But now we know that our area of impact is bigger than that 4-county area. And so in 2025, we hope to have 8 counties to be part of RISE and help financially support our efforts. We may eventually be as large as 20 counties, but we want to scale that appropriately. And the word that we've been putting out about our action plan for those 6 focus areas that I mentioned, as well as we are talking about standing up employer forums throughout the region that really will provide a format for our industrial employers to talk about best practices and talk about trends and network with one another to try to learn from one another. And so I think generally speaking, whether it's the public school systems, the military partners, our underrepresented friends through nonprofits, higher ed, our employers, everybody has generally been very receptive to what we're doing because I think they all agree that we have a responsibility, specifically to our employers. They've invested millions and in some cases billions of dollars in our region, and they're creating lots of jobs, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of. And I like to say we're going to provide the service after the sale because we work very hard to get industry here in the state of Georgia, and we're great at it. And I think by us focusing on what happens after you cut the ribbon and making sure we've got the sustainable workforce in place for our industries to be successful long term, we're fulfilling our obligation to the company that we made during the recruitment process that we truly want to be their partner indefinitely.
That was so good. Well, dang, I know. I mean, they obviously have the right person for the job. And it makes me so happy to know that like local, I don't know, kids will grow up and these jobs will be ready and waiting for them, and they wouldn't have known that, or it would have been harder to find. You hear that a lot in areas like that where there's these big companies, but they don't really know what the pipeline is, I mean, I've seen that a lot.
Exactly. Well, and that's one thing that we're focusing on is trying to make sure that the students, the teachers, and the parents affiliated with our public school system specifically know about what all the options are. So for me, back in 1996, when I graduated from Glenn Academy in Brunswick, I had one option. My parents said, "You're going to college," and that was right for me back in 1996. But I have a son who's a rising 7th grader, and I want him to know that he has multiple options. He can go to the military, he could go to a technical college or a 4-year college or university, or he could go right into a career. And just because he might choose to go into a career immediately doesn't mean that he takes post-secondary off the table forever. He could have an employer potentially pay for him to continue his education, and then he and I don't have to incur that debt that may be associated with going to higher ed. And so I just think it's important to make sure that we're educating everyone about all the options that our students have post-high school.
I'm so happy for you, and I can't wait to see like everything that comes out of it and to hear some updates from you hopefully soon. Also, cheers your Georgia Power Cup and my Savannah.
Cheers. Happy day. It's great
Happy-
always talking with you, Heather. Thank you so much for the
Yeah, it's
opportunity.
really good to see you. Yep, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Anna.
Bye-bye.